From the 14-year-old who became the voice of Valley Girl to siblings torn apart by a bitter inheritance battle, Frank Zappa's children have endured childhood trauma, family betrayal, and crushing legal wars. One hasn't spoken to her siblings in years. Another was blindsided by their mother's cruel final act, while the youngest turned to mystical healing after witnessing decades of dysfunction. Behind the unconventional parenting myth lies a devastating story of emotional neglect, sexual chaos, and a mother's deathbed betrayal that destroyed a family forever. Here's what really happened to Frank Zappa's children. Moon Unit Zappa. Moon Unit Zappa's journey from teenage pop culture icon to trauma survivor reveals one of the most heartbreaking stories of celebrity childhood gone wrong. Born in 1967 as the eldest of Frank Zappa's 4 children, she became famous overnight at age 14 when her improvised Valley Girl performance on her father's song became his only top 40 hit and sparked a national cultural phenomenon. What should have been a triumph quickly turned into a source of deep pain and confusion for the young girl. Despite the song's massive success and Grammy nomination, Frank Zappa grew to resent the commercial popularity of Valley Girl because it overshadowed what he considered his more serious musical work. The success that brought Moon Unit brief celebrity status at school soon turned her classmates against her, with many spitting on her and accusing her of ruining their lives by mocking their speech patterns. Even more devastating was discovering years later that her parents had withheld her royalties from the hit song, leaving her feeling exploited by the very people who should have protected her. The reality behind the Zappa family's public image as an eccentric but loving household was far darker than anyone knew. In her 2024 memoir, Earth to Moon, Moon Unit reveals the disturbing details of her childhood, describing her parents as 2 powerful and erratic narcissists who had little patience for actual child rearing. The family home in Laurel Canyon was a chaotic environment where naked strangers regularly cavorted in the living spaces, and Frank's numerous affairs with groupies played out in full view of his children. Most traumatically, Moon Unit recalls how one of her father's groupies, whom she refers to as the Auckland Slut, actually moved into their basement for an extended period. The constant presence of groupies and the sexual chaos in their home forced Moon Unit and her siblings to navigate an adult world they were completely unprepared for. She describes her mother Gail as dependent on Frank, but filled with years of accumulated resentment over his infidelities, creating a household where the children lived in constant fear of their mother's rageful mood swings. Frank's absence, due to constant touring, left Gail to manage the domestic chaos however she saw fit, often through what Moon Unit describes as a vicious streak. The organizing principle of the household was to give Frank complete freedom to focus on his work, regardless of the emotional cost to his children. Moon Unit found herself forced into a caregiving role while still in grade school, developing what she calls the toxic femininity version of selflessness and chronic giving, until I'm dust and have no needs. The final devastating blow came after decades of serving as her mother's caretaker. When Gail Zappa was dying of lung cancer in 2015, she began saying weird things and asking Moon Unit, "Do you forgive me for what I've done?" Only after her mother's death did Moon Unit discover what Gail meant. Despite Frank Zappa's will stating that his estate should be divided equally among his 4 children, Gail had secretly altered the family trust, giving her younger children Ahmet and Diva 30% each, while leaving Moon Unit and Dweezil with only 20%. Moon Unit called this revelation the most hideous shock of my life, feeling completely betrayed after spending a full year caring for her dying mother, bringing her green juice and driving her to doctor appointments. The unequal distribution meant that Moon Unit and Dweezil became mere beneficiaries with no decision-making power, forced to seek permission from their younger siblings to make money from their father's music or merchandise. This betrayal led to 6 years of complete silence between Moon Unit and her siblings Ahmet and Diva, as she struggled to rebuild her sense of family, love, and trust from the ground up. Dweezil Zappa. Dweezil Zappa's transformation from beloved MTV personality to isolated family outcast represents one of the most tragic falls from grace in rock legacy stories. Born Ian Donald Calvin Euclid Zappa in 1969, he became known by his nickname Dweezil, which his father Frank had coined after a funny-looking toe on his mother's foot. Unlike his siblings, Dweezil showed genuine musical talent from an early age, learning guitar directly from legends like Eddie Van Halen, who produced his first single when Dweezil was just 12 years old. During the 1980s, Dweezil became a teen heartthrob as one of MTV's most popular video jockeys alongside his sister Moon Unit. His good looks, musical ability, and famous last name made him a natural star. Appearing in major films like Pretty in Pink and The Running Man while releasing his own albums, he seemed destined to carry on his father's musical legacy with both talent and charisma. Dating high-profile musicians like Lisa Loeb and hosting cooking shows on the Food Network. However, Dweezil's personal life began unraveling with his first marriage to fashion stylist Lauren Knudsen in 2005. The couple had 2 daughters, Zola, Frank Zappa, and Ceylon Indira Zappa. But their relationship quickly deteriorated. When Knudsen filed for divorce in 2010, the legal proceedings became a public embarrassment for Dweezil. His divorce attorney James Eliaser eventually sued him for $37,498.75 in unpaid legal bills, exposing his financial struggles to the media. The divorce case dragged on for years, while Dweezil battled over custody arrangements and financial obligations. The most devastating blow to Dweezil's life came after his mother Gail's death in 2015, when he discovered that his inheritance had been drastically reduced compared to his younger siblings. Instead of receiving an equal share of his father's estate as originally planned, Dweezil was left with only 20%, while his siblings, Ahmet and Diva, each received 30% and complete control over the family business. This meant that Dweezil, despite being Frank Zappa's most musically gifted child, had to seek permission from his younger siblings to perform his father's music or sell related merchandise. The inheritance betrayal sparked a bitter legal war that consumed Dweezil's life for years. His touring act, Zappa Plays Zappa, which had successfully honored his father's complex musical legacy, became the center of trademark disputes and licensing battles. The family trust, now controlled by Ahmet and Diva, ordered Dweezil to stop using the Zappa Plays Zappa name, forcing him to tour under the awkward title Dweezil Zappa Plays Frank Zappa. When legal pressures intensified, he defiantly renamed his tour Dweezil Zappa Plays Whatever the F it symbol, %K He Wants, Cease and Desist Tour, even selling t-shirts with his siblings' legal threats printed on them. Despite a brief reconciliation announced in 2018, the family relationships continued to deteriorate. Dweezil's second marriage to Megan Marcicano, which had lasted nearly 10 years, ended in divorce in 2022, leaving him with another failed relationship and additional legal costs. By 2024, the isolation was complete. According to a Washington Post investigation, Dweezil declined to participate in family meetings, and his wife texted reporters that Dweezil isn't interested in spending any time in the presence of his brother, ever. Now 55 years old, Dweezil continues touring his father's music alone, completely estranged from all 3 of his siblings, and carrying the Zappa musical legacy as a solitary, bitter figure. Ahmet Zappa. Ahmet Zappa's rise to become the most powerful figure in the Zappa family empire represents one of the most unexpected transformations in celebrity family dynamics. Born Ahmet Imuka Rodan Zappa on May 15, 1974, he was named after music executive Ahmet Ertegun, whom his father Frank greatly admired. Though some sources suggest the name came from an imaginary household helper, the family used to joke about. Unlike his older siblings, who pursued music and entertainment in more traditional ways, Ahmet quietly developed into a shrewd businessman with an unusual talent for turning creative concepts into profitable ventures. While his siblings struggled with the chaos of their unconventional upbringing, Ahmet channeled his energy into writing and producing, eventually becoming a New York Times best-selling author. His breakthrough came with children's books like The Monstrous Memoirs of a Mighty McFearless and the picture book series Because I'm Your Dad and Because I'm Your Mom, which showcased his ability to create content that resonated with mainstream audiences. His most significant commercial success came through his partnership with Disney, where he co-created the Star Darlings franchise with his wife, Shayna Muldoon, transforming what could have been a simple children's book series into a multimedia empire spanning books, toys, and digital content. Ahmet's business acumen extended far beyond children's entertainment. Under his production company, Monsterfoot Productions, he conceived, developed, and produced major Hollywood films, including The Odd Life of Timothy Green for Walt Disney Pictures, starring Jennifer Garner and Joel Edgerton. He also secured development deals for projects like Dodge and Twist and Savage Planet with Sony Pictures, establishing himself as a legitimate player in the entertainment industry rather than simply trading on his family name. His work earned him Emmy nominations and positioned him as someone who understood both creative vision and commercial viability. The turning point in Ahmet's relationship with his family came when his mother, Gail, began recognizing his business talents and involving him more deeply in managing the Zappa estate. By 2015, when Gail was dying of lung cancer, she had already decided that Ahmet and his sister Diva should take control of the family trust, giving them 30% each compared to the 20% shares left to his older siblings, Moon Unit and Dweezil. According to the family's lawyer, this decision reflected Gail's belief that Moon and Dweezil really never had any interest in the business, whereas Ahmet is a business person and was involved in helping Gail make deals. This inheritance arrangement transformed Ahmet from a background family member into the primary target of his older siblings' anger and resentment. Moon Unit and Dweezil accused him of operating in secrecy and using his controlling position in the trust to silence their complaints through legal settlements. The most public battle involved Dweezil's touring rights, where Ahmet's trust demanded that Dweezil stop using the trademarked name Zappa Plays Zappa and pay licensing fees for performing their father's music. When Dweezil refused and launched public attacks against the trust's decisions, Ahmet and Diva filed court papers seeking permission to respond to what they called scurrilous attacks, designed to protect and preserve the value of the assets of the trust. Despite brief attempts at reconciliation in 2018, the family relationships never fully healed. Ahmet has maintained that his role as trustee requires him to make business decisions that may be unpopular with his siblings, stating that he has an emotional responsibility because he is my brother and I care about him, but I also have a legal and fiduciary responsibility to do the right thing as a co-trustee. Today, Ahmet continues to manage the extensive Frank Zappa catalog through partnerships with Universal Music Group while remaining estranged from his older siblings, having transformed from the family's quiet middle child into its most powerful and controversial figure, Diva Zappa. Diva Zappa's evolution from the youngest member of rock's most chaotic family into a reclusive mystical healer represents perhaps the most unusual response to childhood trauma among Frank Zappa's children. Born Diva Muffin Zappa on July 30, 1979, she received her distinctive name because, according to her father Frank, of the loud quality of her voice. She's audible at 300 yards. As the baby of the family, she experienced the Zappa household's dysfunction from a uniquely vulnerable position, being only 14 years old when her father died of prostate cancer in 1993. Even as a child, Diva showed signs of being deeply affected by the chaos surrounding her family. At age 12, she won an award in a poster contest designed to raise awareness about child abuse and neglect. A recognition that seems particularly significant given the emotional environment she was growing up in. While her older siblings were dealing with the immediate aftermath of their father's affairs and their mother's volatile moods, Diva was still trying to understand the adult world that had been forced upon her from birth. Rather than pursuing traditional entertainment careers like her siblings, Diva retreated into artistic expression and spiritual practices that allowed her to process her experiences in deeply personal ways. She learned to knit from actress Laurie Metcalf and discovered that the meditative nature of the craft provided her with a sense of peace and control that had been missing from her childhood. In 2002, she launched her own business called Handmade Beauty, where she sells self-designed clothing that is primarily knitted or crocheted, consisting of hats, ponchos, and skirts. A percentage of all her sales are donated to the Creative Visions Foundation, showing her desire to transform her personal healing into something that could help others. Diva's most extraordinary artistic project is a scarf she named Emilio, which she began knitting over a decade ago with the goal of making it exactly 1 mile long. She estimates that Emilio will not be completed for at least 15 more years, as she only works on the scarf when she feels completely present and makes every decision about material, color, and pattern intuitively in the moment. The scarf carries ribbons from packages and yarn gifted by friends, making it what she describes as a living witness to her life. When seen in person, Emilio appears wound around Diva while she methodically brings more of his form to life, creating what observers describe as an idealized version of a mother-child relationship that protects them both from the outside world. Beyond her textile work, Diva has developed into what she calls a healer, offering tarot card readings, energy work, and restorative yoga from her home in Los Angeles. She describes her approach as creating magic and splits her time between creative projects and healing modalities, always blurring the line between the two. Her website presents her as someone who learned about human motivation and emotional management through observing her dad's tours, her mom's parties, Los Angeles school hierarchies, and family dynamics, suggesting that she transformed her traumatic childhood observations into tools for helping others. Despite her reclusive lifestyle, Diva shares control of the Zappa family trust with her brother Ahmed, holding a 30% stake that gives her significant power over her father's legacy. However, she remains unmarried at 45 and appears to have chosen a solitary path focused on spiritual practices and artistic creation, rather than traditional relationships or public recognition. Her role in the trust is described as being present when her father's work is highlighted, but she seems more interested in her healing practice and the endless creation of Emilio than in the business disputes that have torn her family apart.